Thank you all for tuning into DocuCourse.
And we'll get started in a minute.
Narratives are the overarching stories we internalize that are created from a combination of smaller stories we hear every day, from the media, arts, and social interactions. These narratives shape our views, opinions, and assumptions of the greater world and of ourselves. We have an opportunity to be strategic in shaping understanding by creating and sharing new stories that are authentic and asset-based.
We have partnered with Be Great Together, the Convergence Partnership, and Assemble to create DocuCourse with the intention of telling inspiring stories from community changemakers as an effort to change narratives. We hope that by listening to these changemakers and by following the training guides, viewers will create their own stories and build new narratives as they work to change their communities.
So what is DocuCourse? DocuCourse is where we take community stories and combine it with community strategies to inspire community change. And it's all from the perspective of community change makers who are actually out there doing the work day by day. We believe that most people want to make a difference, but sometimes we just need a better understanding of the issues out there. And then we need a little guidance on where to get started. So grab your popcorn and notebook. Relax.
What gives me fulfillment in my community is to see families restored, see those that have no hope regain hope, as we're challenged with creating some support for our community. I come to find out that I had cancer, and it was on one of my vocal cords. So I went through radiation. 2005, 2007, it returned. My dreams would have come to an end had it not been for my friend, Dr. James Maxwell, who encouraged me not to give up, but to continue. Without his support, the Village Initiative would not be the Village Initiative. Not knowing and understanding the circumstances of ex-offenders, I stereotyped. I just felt that their crime and their sentencing, they deserved. So I didn't have compassion for that population.
Where I was shot at, it come from my back, hit me in my stomach, and it never exited. It shredded 2/3 my small intestines and punctured my kidney, so I lost the kidney. And of course, I had another one grazed my leg. It was an AR, and it took a chunk of my leg out, so I'm partially paralyzed, from the waist down on my right leg.
So IPA is interpretive phenomenological analysis. It's a type of qualitative research methodology. And because I was looking at speaking with victims of crime and also perpetrators of crime and wanting to know their thoughts and experiences around forgiveness, then it really becomes a really great methodology to use, because the whole focus is what is the meaning that they make. So that's the kind of methodology that works really well when you're kind of wanting to get the people's thoughts and feelings of an experience that they've had or their views on something. A discredited identity is a stigmatized identity. And in particular, that is problematic for those who commit wrongs. So those who have a criminal identity, it tends to subsume all their other normal identities. So mother, father, brother, sister, friend, peer, all of the different identities that they would have had, all of a sudden gets overran by this more stigmatized identity. It's like that becomes their overreaching or master identity. And when someone has that, it makes it really a challenge for them when they're trying to re-enter the community. You know, they are not, it's like they're not worth something anymore.
It was not until a friend of mine's, Albert Crawford, brought a young man to me at my restaurant and asked me to have a conversation with him. He shared with me, if I can recall, that he was a black man with a felon. He had just been released. And he had a wife and 3 kids that was being evicted that day. Because of his past history, he was unable to get a job. And I said, young man, let me talk to my wife and I'll visit you this afternoon. My wife and I paid his rent because his intentions was to commit a crime, to prevent his family from being evicted. That raised the level of understanding to me, the obstacles by helping that population that needed a second chance. So we started 2007 just providing mental and addiction counseling to that particular population.
He gets it, you know, as a person who has not ever been incarcerated. One of the things that I saw, or I'm even seeing now, is how he's still growing in understanding, wanting to know more of what our returning citizens has been through and what has impacted them. You have to be able to know how to engage with those returning citizens because they suffer so much from childhood trauma and the prison trauma. People not understanding, people don't, you know, all they see is the number on their forehead, you know, the prison number.
It's easy to be able to be judgmental in certain situations, but staying away from that and just being able to meet the need of the individual. But right now, today, a lot of people approach them in a very broken spot. So they're not able to even process what the future could hold for them.
So I found as I would interview different offenders that they would explain to me through stories of victimization how that framed their perceptions of forgiveness. So for example, I would ask questions like, so can you define for me what does forgiveness mean to you? Most of the time, they started their whole story with a time that they had been victimized, a time that someone had harmed them, a parent who had neglected them and who had walked out of their life, and how they learned to forgive that person and realized that it didn't have anything to do with them personally. That was their parents' issue, so they forgave. And so I thought it was so fascinating that they framed their understandings of forgiveness as letting go of the hurt and wounds and trauma and pain that they had experienced in their own life. They would use words like being set free. I've been set free of all those negative, thoughts and emotions that I had in regards to what happened to me.
Well, when I was younger, my father, he worked construction, built bridges and highways and roads, and I wanted to go play sports. I wanted to be the first one to play every sport, and so that's what I strived at, playing the sports. And I did try to go to the cement mason school like my father and them wanted me to, but I didn't last a week in that. So my father was very abusive, but he'd buy you the world, he'd give you the world. That was his way of showing you he loved us, but he never once said he loved me. Not one time in my whole entire life have he ever said, I love you, but he expressed love by buying me cars and making sure that we was clothed and fed and things like that. And so it starts you to look for love in other ways and other avenues and other things and even people. One minute he's showing you he loves you by what he thinks is love, by giving you these things, and the next minute he might be shooting at you. He might be swinging a hammer at you, or a 2x4. And so that I'd always said I never want to be like my father, you know. And then if I had kids, I'd never treat them like that, and I would show them I love them. I tell them I love them, and so once again I would turn to the streets. Everything I learned from the streets. What I thought was love, or what I thought was acceptance, what I thought was the way things were supposed to be. And this is the house I grew up in. I was born and raised at, right here at 1012 Cleveland. Me and my siblings, my mom and dad, and this is where a lot of all the abuse took place growing up. And eventually, I turned it into a good time house. This was a good time house, my neighbor's house here. And so, with this house and my house and the house over there on Haskell, we ran this whole area. Eventually, I just started using the weed, smoking the PCP, and trying to sell it to my little friends. And this is in junior high school. And so that's what we did. That's all we knew, was get high, play sports.
You know, when I was growing up, I kind of come from a situation where grandma raised me, so I always felt like, you know, people in uniform held authority, so I wanted to be like a firefighter or a police officer. It was just a uniform that I felt projected a sense of discipline and power. And I guess being in an empowerless, you know, environment, kind of growing up, no parents there, that gave me a sense of comfort towards myself. I moved with my grandma when I was 9. Up until that point, I was with my mom, and we kind of fluctuated from pillar to post. You know, nothing was ever consistent, and so my living quarters, there wasn't no solidarity there. And being young like that is never really at a point where I felt it was a sense of establishing a sincere relationship with people, because I already had this mindset, I ain't gonna be around here long enough. And so my mom battled with her sense of, you know, her world of addiction, and my dad was here and there, so he kind of had his own, so I never really, you know, had his attention. And grandma took me in, and when she took me in, she would express, you know, her discomfort in a forced situation, I felt like. And so, you know, by the grace of God, you know, I was able to cope with my circumstances and overcome that sense of discomfort of not being wanted. But, you know, I came to a point to where I grew to just accept what I'm in and make the best of it, because my life ain't gonna be perfect as much as I had this fictitious reality for it to be. And with that being said, it kind of led me into finding myself getting in trouble, doing drugs I kind of waited till a late age to start doing drugs, but, you know, getting in trouble, doing drugs, drinking, and before I knew, I developed my own addiction from it, because at the end of the day, I was trying to steady find comfort in me, and I never had it.
We realized the community needed help. And so we began our research. And what we found, 70 to 75% of those that have been incarcerated coming back to that zip code was dealing with addiction. They've been incarcerated as a result of selling or using. And usually it's a combination of both. But what we realized in our study, there was no resource for them. Those addictions can be called self-medicating from childhood trauma that had never been addressed. they self-medicated, created a criminal life, which created incarceration. And now, during that incarceration, the trauma that they experience while they're incarcerated, we sometimes minimize the trauma of the like a need for mental therapy. And so, sometimes we have to help them understand that there should not be a stigma around that disease. It's normal, it's natural to seek medical attention, help for those issues that it's not a fault of their own.
I started detaching from family even more. And the more I detached, the more my father would, you need to read this, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do that. And the more he tried to beat it in me, to beat, some sense into me, what he would call it, And so the more he did that, the more I started staying out, running the streets. And at the age of 14, I had a friend that was going to Chicago. He asked me if I wanted to go, and I said, yeah. And I told my mom and them I was going to Chicago and just took off. And we stayed on Lakeshore Drive, Holiday Inn, for about 3 or 4 days. We would break in other liquor stores and bring them their liquor and sell it to him for half price. And so, and he was a mailman. He owned this building, but he was a mailman too. These windows you see up here, I got them from the lumberyard down in Fairfax. And I tore my knee up playing basketball. So there went the scholarships. And then the depression kicked in. And I realized and understanding all that. And so now I'm really depressed, but I'm not really knowing that and understanding it at age 16, 17, and 18. So at 18, when I graduated, I got introduced to cocaine. And so now I'm using cocaine, PCP, and weed. And things that got so bad from junior high to high school, and I was so good at sports, and I wasn't doing my homework, doing my work, they would pass me just to make sure I played sports. So I'm thinking that was a good thing, but it hurt me in the long run.
Was trying to be accepted by my peers. And so I didn't feel that I had that acceptance because I would adhere to the discipline that I had at home. Said, of course, this is my only sense of living quarters. You know what I mean? Mom ain't there, don't have no place, daddy ain't there. And so I had to apply myself to grandma's rules and regulations. But at that age, 17, I got in trouble, got caught with 2 guns in the stolen car with a couple guys. One got away, so they caught me and the other guy. I became more indignative and rebellious minded. And if I know it, I'm doing drugs and I'm doing it to escape my reality, you know what I mean? Not knowing, not having no sense of worrying thought or what's going to happen next, just trying to, live for the moment, give or take the environment I was in.
Yes, I think most of all, we don't see the person as, and think about the trauma and obstacles they went through, and we look at it from a perspective I overcame, and I didn't have all the obstacles and everything, and so then they should be able to just pick up the piece. And I kind of like doing an exercise with them. In my exercise there, I have like a $5 bill, a $10 bill, and we kind of like wrinkle and cover it all up. Then I allowed them to see that drug and alcohol is still life. It helps a lot of wrinkles in it. We smooth the $5 bill out, and their life still has the same value. So it puts a clear picture onto what they're going through.
It's important that the community understands the challenges of coming back, and you've already paid your debt to society, but to come back into a society where you already feel shame, you already feel shunned. And so there's already guilt and shame you walking with anyway. So for the community to say you're no longer, or you're not part of the community anymore because of what you've done, no, even though you paid your debt to society, that's really hard. It's overwhelming. And sometimes that can cause for recidivism. Even though I haven't done that, I can't keep allowing them to pay for something they've already been in prison for. I mean, we've all made mistakes. Just some of us haven't been caught doing it.
My experience is those that we've helped give a second chance to have been tremendous in giving back. They want to give back. We need to allow them the opportunity to give back. Without that opportunity, it affects the family in a devastating way. Their kids deal with that stigma in school. And I'm confident one of the ways we help them is restoring that returning citizen in a dignified way.
I think it's important to remember that words have a lot of power to them. They have the potential to cause stigma. As we have mentioned, the whole identity of a criminal is a stigmatized identity. And so when we look even at that word offender, and yes, when they're re-entering into the community, we do tend to put the X at the beginning of it, is that as though that's somehow going to help us look at them different. They're an ex-offender. It's the whole idea of the us and them, we other people that are different than us. I've noticed that of late that some correctional departments are starting to, at the very least, tack on and rehabilitation at the end. So for example, not too long ago, the California Department of Corrections is now the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. So we see a very small movement toward trying to get something more positive in here, that really the goal is not simply correcting their behavior as though they were a child. It's like, what can we really do? What can we look at around their lives and the challenges they face that we can, during their period of being in the correctional supervision, what can we do that will help make a positive difference? What would be a rehabilitative aim that we could use that would more effectively allow them to successfully reintegrate into our communities again, and our families as well?
So this one time I got out, and just being back in the neighborhood, in the same playmates, playgrounds, and people, from what they remember, how I was, this time, I really decided I wanted to change. I want to make a better life for myself. But all they seen was the same old Kevin, the same old shankster, robber, stealer, theft. And so they literally took off running. And now I'm running behind them. Hey, I'm not that same person.
It used to be packed everywhere, every day. Mondays it was closed, but Tuesday through Sundays. And up at the top over there on that other side, we had benches. Everybody would come, we'd be gambling, smoking weed, and playing music. It was like a party on the outside, and then you had music on the inside. And
so it was several stigmas from jobs to neighborhoods. I felt now, my perception, even when I went to church, that people was looking at me, funny, hiding their purses and things like that. And so it was a lot of stigma, a lot of shame, that I felt. I had to learn to forgive myself. I just started little things. I started trying to do to clean my act up, the perception of how people perceive me.
And I felt it was always some type of rubber band hinged to somebody helping me. So one of the issues that I always had was asking for help. And the reason why that was one of my issues, because I didn't want to deal with the word no. I didn't like rejection. And that's what kept me out there in the streets and kept me in the world and just kept me hanging with friends that were drinking and drugging so long, because I felt like as long as I'm doing what you're doing, no is not an option. So this house, I was dropping off a lady friend, And as I got out of the car tried to actually cut me off, and the truck tried to cut me off. And so when I noticed it, I feel like, let me just get her out of the car so I can really see what's going on. And that's where the incident took place at. One of my main stigmas was certain situations that I needed to let go of, I wouldn't, because it hinged on the idea that I didn't have no foundation under my feet. And so I was probably using you as a means to keep me grounded, to have a roof over my head, or I was using you as a means for me to have some transportation.
We have seen, especially of late, a lot of instances where people have been found guilty of offenses that they didn't even commit. So the whole notion of guilt has a lot of nuances. Beginning at the very start of when someone is charged with a crime, some people call it the perp walk. You see them in the orange jumpsuit and their hands behind their back. So the stigma and us moving them outside of the circle of law-abiding citizens, it begins from the moment that they're charged with that offense. So they've got this label, they've got this name, they've got this discredited and stigmatized identity. The unfortunate thing is, and I think something that we need to consider, is that after they've gone through all that and paid their debt to society, now what?
The steps of forgiveness is very important. That's the first thing. And then you have to show sincerity with that forgiveness, that you're true and that you believe in your heart that, hey, this person has made some bad decisions, but I'm not going to hold that against them. I forgive them. That will help them forgive themselves for things that they've done. So that's important.
We've asked our staff to always make our returning citizens feel welcome and encouraged. Giving them a sense of hope without judging, a sense of forgiveness. And that carries over into our transitional house. Recently, we were awarded 4 lots for transitional housing. Transitional housing is a key to the success of returning citizens. So we're expecting to add as many as 20 beds in our transitional housing.
Unconditional forgiveness is what he showed. No matter what I did, no matter where I went, no matter where I was. If I called him, he was there. If I needed him, he was there. Even if I didn't, he was there. Who buys someone that ain't even working an apartment?
I became a follower to be accepted by my peers versus breaking off and doing what I wanted as a leader to set myself apart. And so his wisdom to, approaching the way he was teaching class, it just excited me with so much insight and enlightenment that I've been yearning for. Now the stability behind it all is that I found comfort in who I am, regardless of what I've been through. And the comfort that I've been able to find is that I don't have to suffer for it no more, but I can share it so to avoid somebody else's suffering.
When I interviewed individuals and asked them, so whose forgiveness would be meaningful to you? Or is there anyone whose forgiveness would be meaningful to you? That tended to come out of the forgiveness that was received from family. There was a deep connection between having forgiveness from someone that they loved. Self-forgiveness was another element that was important. And just like tolerance, I think it's important to point out that it was never self-forgiveness forgiving themselves for any of the offenses. It was not offense-based at all. They said that would be inappropriate. They were not interested in that. But at some point, over time, they were beginning to learn and understand, and often this came through being participants in programs or classes, counseling, whatever it was. They were coming to the understanding that if they were going to be able to move positively forward in their lives, they were going to have to quit beating themselves up over the things that they had done. And that was where self-forgiveness played a part. And they had to quit beating themselves up. But they still had worth.
I will allow myself and restrain myself and be disciplined enough to show love, to show kindness, to show support. We use that word lightly, unconditional.
We provide services like mental health, substance use, case management, transitional housing, food, clothing. And those services are just maybe minimal to some people, but to that returning citizen, it's the difference between them being self-sufficient and it teaches them also how to navigate their resources, empower them to say, I can do this on my own, and give them the tools to do that.
That has intrigued me to want to give back, because I think a lot of my sufferings can change somebody else. But I had to grow in my understanding in order to have that enlightenment. And the village has showed that to me physically for me to mentally and spiritually come to that same conclusion.
Well, to have a place like the House of Hope to come to, first of all, when you coming out of penitentiary, coming out of incarceration, or coming off with drugs, once again, you feeling like you're going to be judged, condemned. So there's no judgment, there's no condemnation, and so it's teaching you self-respect. It's teaching you to trust. It's teaching you to love yourself, to trust others, even your families. We allow your families to come over, so it's just a place of refuge for them.
They need a positive transitional location. When the state is 60% and the national average is 76% failure, a reoffending, and we have 10 to 15% of reoffending just by providing positive structure, transitional housing with the rich population is really vital for them to be successful.
I was in the county jail waiting to go to the prison, and the officers came and called me down to the head sheriff's, and they told me my father had died, and he never really had seen me be redeemed. And so his last memories were this man that was robbing and stealing and killing. But they let me go to the funeral. I was handcuffed, but they let me go anyway. Just not having that chance to see him and talk to him, and just to tell him I was sorry and how much I loved him, whether he told me or not. Some of the experiences from my relationship with my dad, like I said, I never wanted to be like my dad. He was quick-tempered, and I had developed a quick temper. My mom would always say, boy, your quick temper is going to be the death of you. And so fast forward, I have a 12-year-old and a ready to be 2-year-old this month. And it was a couple of times, my 12-year-old, I see me in him, and I see my father in me, where I snapped on him and reacted to him the same way my father reacted to me. And it just broke me down crying. I apologized to him, and I let him know how my father did, and I don't want to be like that, and I don't want to be like that towards him. The affection and how to really love a child, I didn't know. And I told him that. I said, I really don't know how to love you or to show you. People think it's easy, but for me it wasn't. And so I seen them same patterns and same behaviors being played out. And I just swore that no, this curse of that is not going to continue on. And I just made it my aim to change, to grow. And that started just by watching men like Brother George, Mr. Riley.
Someone asked me, well, what motivates me is to see them restored, from their hurt, from their brokenness, to be able to talk about it and not carry it into that next generation. So the human side of it, many of us have a hard time relating to it. But you need to be close enough. If we're really gonna make a difference, we have to allow ourselves to be vulnerable enough and to get close enough to those that are dealing with the hurt and the pain. And you have to touch that person. And as the executive director, I've got a big responsibility just making sure that the lights are kept on. But I can't lose the human part of that we're here to help people. We're dealing with the lives of individuals and bettering the community, sending a better father home to his children, reuniting a mother that have been separated from her children.
You know, I always say every advocate needs an advocate, and he's our biggest advocate. And even as staff, if we have something that we got going on, we need somebody to talk to, he's right there, you know. So it helps balances us out. You know, first law of nature is self-preservation. I always say I have to keep myself together if I want to help someone else. So he ensures that by just being who he is as our leader and just showing his heart.
It's a time and an opportunity in your community to seek out and expose yourself to a returning citizen that wants that second chance.
Thank you all for tuning into DocuCourse, where we give stories and strategies for change. We always say at DocuCourse, we believe most people want to make a difference. Sometimes you just need a better understanding of the issues out there, and then you need some practical guidance on where to get started. Before we go into our conversation today with Mr. Randy George, we'd like to thank our partners at the Health Forward Foundation, Convergence Partnership, and Assemble.fyi. Again, thank you for tuning into DocuCourse Returning and Redemption. With me today is Executive Director Randy George. Mr. George, thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
So viewers got a chance to tune into the story with DocuCourse. Two of the people that we got to hear from, their personal stories, were Kevin and Mike. How are Kevin and Mike doing today?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. Mike is just phenomenal. He now owns a trucking business. He's driving over the road. Kevin is giving back. He's peer-to-peer. He is a manager of one of our transitional houses. So they're doing great.
You know, when we hear those stories, we talked a lot about, what it takes for those who've been impacted by the justice system, what it takes for them to reacclimate into society, supports needed. A lot, we heard a lot about the theme around forgiveness, and just even the personal ability to accept those faults, move past those. Can you kind of give us some deeper insight into, you've got years of experience doing this. What are some of the key supports, most effective supports that you've seen that can really help an individual looking to reacclimate into society?
I think the primary thing is giving hope. Giving them hope that they can be successful. They've dealt with trauma sometime prior to incarceration. Other times in incarceration. So giving them a second chance, giving them hope is major. Having them feel that they can acquire a job that provides living wages is key. Transitional housing is valuable.
And in 1 second, I actually do want to go into the transitional housing, but one of the things you just said was hope. And there was this theme that we heard around the value that all people hold value and the value that they bring. When we think about that, Riley talked about the example with I think it was like a $5 bill. He crumbles it and opens it back up, and just like a $5 bill still has value. Showing them that their life still has value as well. What are some of those valuable pieces, those perspectives in particular, that you've seen individuals who you've been able to support bring to the table?
One of the things I've asked the staff, any individual that comes through our doors, I want them to leave feeling valued. Without that, without the sense of hope, they're doomed to fail. So, yes, that $5 bill that's been crumbled doesn't mean that you're a failure all your life. It means you've made mistakes.
We all do.
We all do. We've learned. Now we need a second chance to make life not only better for them, but for their family.
And one of the things y'all talk about in the documentary for the community as well. You talked about transitional housing. And of course, there are many avenues of support that are needed. But one of the things that you've really honed in on is transitional housing. I know we talk about it in the documentary, but why is transitional housing so important?
Yeah. Transitional housing. How do you get a job without a place to live? What's your mailing address? How do you prepare for a job? So, if you have no place to live, how do you get the job? They're connected. You need a safe place. Not only that, having been incarcerated 5, 10, 15 years, figuring out how to navigate, how to just things you and I take for granted is a major obstacle for them. So I think the key thing, finding a safe place with structure. Sometime even going back to their whole environment is not a safe place. So providing them a safe place to live is valuable.
What are some things that y'all are working on right now with transitional housing?
There's such a need for transitional housing. That's our major project. We launched a campaign to build 4 transitional housing. Currently, we're searching. We have 2 women that we're searching for housing for. We're looking to start construction within the next 30 days. We're going to build 4 houses, 2 for women, 2 for men.
What do you envision when you think about the transitional housing, the individuals that go through this over the years? What do you envision the impact of the Village Initiative making, let's say over the next, 4 to 5 years, once you have your transitional housing in place? What type of impact do you see this having, let's say on the community at large? I think we talk a lot about it from that individual perspective, but as these individuals go through their transitional housing, they're able to reacclimate into society and become, who they always were as a member of society. What does that look like through that transitional housing?
I think one of the things we take for granted is we're not just helping one individual. If we have one, we're impacting a family, a father of 4. How do we turn that father to be a productive father, to give guidance to his kids, reconnect to his wife? And now, by impacting 1, you've impacted 6. That's valuable to the community.
That's a very interesting perspective. That makes it so. If let's say I'm a person, I've watched this, and I've watched Returning and Redemption. I maybe even be thinking about the Village Initiative. If someone is still asking, what is that thing that I can do to support a returning citizen, or an initiative like the Village Initiative that supports returning citizens? What is, one thing that you would tell them, a piece of advice you tell them to get active and get involved if they would like to?
I think you said the key word, get involved. Any level. Become a mentor. Become a volunteer. Help the village and other organizations like the village. There is so much to discover. One of the things that I've discovered, so many that have gone through incarceration have experienced childhood trauma. No fault of their own. Childhood trauma, helping them navigate, helping them to overcome some of the trauma that they've experienced as a child or even incarceration. So get involved. It's valuable. Become a mentor.
How can individuals get involved with the Village Initiative?
Show up at the village, 3004 North 27th Street. Show up. We will connect you. We have a mentor coordinator that will help you learn the skills of mentoring, walking beside someone who's been incarcerated, helping them get prepared for a job, giving them job skills. It's valuable.
And, one final thing I'd like, what about the transitional housing? You just mentioned a campaign. Is there a way that people can get involved with that as well?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. How do they go about getting involved with the transitional housing campaign?
Because one of the greatest needs is making a financial donation. We've had phenomenal support, but we need more. Our goal is to raise $4.5 million. We're halfway there. If you're watching this and you would like to support, we would love to have your support. We're not in this for the money. We're in it to help individuals get a second chance, help our community be a community of success.
Well, Mr. George, thank you for that. That ends our broadcast for today. Thank you all for tuning in. There should be a survey. We would love for you to take that survey, hear what you think. If you will look at the link, look at the chat, you should see a link there and it'll take you directly to that survey. Please take a moment to fill that out. Again, we'd like to thank our partners at the Health Forward Foundation, Convergence Partnership, and assemble.fyi. On August the 24th, we will be having a virtual screening of Pregnancy and Prejudice. So please take a moment to view the next trailer for that. And thank you all again for joining us tonight.
And I watch as he prepares a syringe.
You can't wait 24 hours to make a phone call and say, I need a ride to the hospital.
They have to, just by law, they have to express what they're testing for and why they're testing for it.
I lied about where my patient was in her labor so that by the time they got to the room, it was too late to use the forceps on her.
We don't talk about the fact that regardless of your socioeconomic status, when you are Black, your infant is still likely to be born of a lower birth weight in an earlier term and preterm compared to any other race.